Hey guys, and welcome back to Schlock and All Quickie Review, YouTube edition. We'll see how this goes. And this time around, we will be looking at Jason Reitman's new movie, Saturday Night. That was bad. That was bad. Look, I actually really enjoyed this movie. But it is, of course, Saturday Night, the 90 minutes lead up into the first ever broadcast of Saturday Night, or what would become Saturday Night Live, in 1975. And it is a chaotic 90 minutes. Everything is happening. Everyone is doing too much drugs. Everyone is arguing with each other. Everyone's seeing who has the biggest ego, or in some cases, the biggest ego. And it is, look, I really liked it. I think it is actually really, really charming. This is not a movie I would say to watch for what actually happened on the night that Saturday Night Live went on air. Lorne Michael did not find Ellen Zweibel at a bar 10 minutes before they went on air. It could have been similar. I mean, Ellen Zweibel was writing for the Borscht Belt comics before he went on SNL. This movie is not about that, like most movies when they're depicting a real live event. It is about cementing the legend of Saturday Night. And Saturday Night Live is a very legendary. It has started so many of the careers of so many comics. Gilda Radner to Will Ferrell, Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph, to Eddie Murphy, going back to 1983, that weird season. This is a movie that is trying to create that bigger-than-life legend. And this is also about movie of egos colliding with each other, generations combusting against other egos of older generations. It is about personalities thrown together in this mix of a untested, well, not untested, because Saturday Night is technically a variety show. Turns into more of a skit show, but it is live on television. It's something that I never grew up with. We never got Saturday Night Live. We just got the byproducts of Saturday Night Live. Because as I like to do on a Schlock and All Quickie review, is I like to pair it with another movie. Something that kind of, what I think pulls out the themes out of the movie. And this time around, I will be going for the 1993 Coneheads. Bear with me. So let's go back to Saturday Night. Of course, this stars Gabrielle LaBelle, starring as another important figure of the 1970s who still has influence over our pop culture today, of course, playing Lorne Michaels. You also have Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase, Ella Hunt as Gilda Radner, Lamore Morris playing Garrett Morris, Nicholas Braun, of course, playing Jim Henson, and Andy Kaufman, Dylan O'Brien playing the Dan Aykroyd, because he is the Dan Aykroyd. J.K. Simmons playing Milton Berr. Cooper Hoffman playing Dick Ebersol, who was one of the original producers. Matt Wood playing John Belushi, who I will say is probably the only one performance that's maybe doing an impersonation of the subject they are playing. And so much other actors this is filled with everyone you know. My biggest surprise was Paul Rust playing Paul Schaefer. I thought he was Elton John for a second. And maybe it was the glasses. You also have Matthew Rhys playing George Carlin. You've got Tracy Letts in there. You've got Robert Wall, of all people. When I say this is a clash of egos, I really mean this is a clash of egos. And I think this is what Jason Reitman's really trying to nail into. I mean, Jason Reitman has an affinity with Saturday Night, especially the original era. He grew up around these guys. His dad, Ivan, famously directed Ghostbusters. Jason Reitman would also direct his own Ghostbusters. And so I think he's trying to really nail in on who these guys were, not necessarily what was happening. And this is the thing I really found fascinating about Saturday Night. This young guy who is untested, not sure what he's actually going to do, maybe a bit looser depicted in the movie. Lorne Michaels is just throwing together a whole bunch of people in a blender to see what comes out. You have the very arrogant, knows he's great, but really wants to do something great with his talent, John Belushi, who was also pure chaos, mainly because, as depicted in the movie, everyone is high. You have a very young Dan Aykroyd, who is trying to figure out his comic stylings and genius and everything like that. You have Chevy Chase, who knows he is good, or as the streets would say, she's fit and she knows it. Who again has his ego is on the ascent. He knows that the sky is the limit, and he knows that he can make a room laugh within 2 seconds, which he does constantly throughout the movie. You have Garrett Morris, who doesn't quite know why he is there and what his place is. You have Gilda Radner, who's just really happy to be anywhere. I mean, not too familiar with Ella Hunt. I only really know her from Horizon, The American Story, Chapter 1, is excited for what this could be, whether it even gets off the ground. You also have Rosie Schuster, played by Rachel Sennott, who is, of course, famously was the wife of Lorne Michaels, but the marriage was on the decline, and they were trying to figure out how they now fitted together. Now they were in a partnership to create something, even though they didn't know it was going to get past like the first week. And of course, then you had the likes of a phone call from Johnny Carson, one of the notable biggest egos in Hollywood at the time. J.K. Simmons, Milton Berle, the most old school. This guy was around with vaudeville. Now he's on television. You have Willem Dafoe playing, I think he's talent executive, David Tebbutt. Again, who was old school? He's got the sunglasses. He's got all the rings. He is in charge. It is more about how head writer having an ego feud with Joan Carbuncle, who is played by Catherine Curtin, who is the standards officer for, not sure if it's just for NBC, but she is there to make sure that these guys are towing the line. SNL does not want to toe the line. And then you have George Carlin, played by Matthew Rhys, who is so angry and so high on cocaine that he is levitating. And I think he performs that feeling very well. So this movie is about chaos. And this movie is about which ego is going to win. I think of all these ones, I love the Rosie Schuster and Lorne Michael relationship, because their marriage is over, yet they still are excited by each other's creativity. I also really love, of course, the Chevy Chase and Milton Berle, the man on the rise, and the guy who's seen it all, who knows he has swagger, even though Chevy Chase may not want to admit it. The standout, everyone's kind of got standout performances. I mean, you have Tracy Lett coming in and delivering a killer scene, then you never see him again. I really loved Morris playing Garrett, who is, he's not sure why he is there. He is trying to deal with all this chaos around him and he's not sure he's up for it. And then has a killer last sequence. And Dylan O'Brien is great. As I said, the one who's doing the impression, I think, is Matt Wood, which I don't think is his fault. I think playing John Belushi is terrifying because he was such a figure larger than life. He is, and because he passed away so soon, is an icon. For me, that is the movie. It is about these people butting heads. It is about the argument. It is about the work through. It is about who is actually in charge. Ultimately, it is Lorne Michaels, because he is still running SNL today. He is still trying to discover new comics and trying to, well, I mean, SNL is an institution. It's still running today. But I love those different arguments that would happen in the movie, because they are defining an era. They are defining who these people are, who are having them, their experiences they are about to bring to entertainment as a whole. Actually, one of my favorite performances by Nicholas Podney, who plays Billy Crystal, who famously had his act cut from the original screening. He actually sounds and looks like Billy Crystal. It's kind of unnerving. He really captures that early Billy Crystal-esque-ness. Watch it. It's kind of insane. And again, it's about the ego of trying to make it and clawing up and getting this chance and then blowing it. It's really about that. Again, it's about building that legend of what we know, or what we think we know Saturday Night Live is, which is a very different beast from what it actually is, what actually happened, who these people actually were. But that's kind of not the point. But this is a race against the clock movie. It is a putting on the show movie, which often fits like that. John Batiste, who also plays Billy Preston, did a lot of the score for this movie, and it does have a very aggressive ticking of the clock. Like, time is running out. You only have a certain amount of time to figure things out before it goes on air, and it has to go on air. This is a live show. You also have Nicholas Braun, who for the first time may have shaken his cousin Greg persona for me, where he plays not one but two characters, Jim Henson and Andy Kaufman. couldn't be more different in terms of their being performers. But I love how they use them popping up in the movie at different times, because Lorne Michaels is literally putting out, well, actually, in some cases, literally putting out fires throughout the movie. But I think this movie is ultimately charming. I think it's filled with people that you are happy to see playing people that you're happy to see. And I think it's a movie where you'll just have a grin on your face. I didn't laugh as much as I thought I was going to, but it's not a straight out comedy, even though it is about comedy, which usually is a way for not to get laughs when you're having, because it is essentially explaining the joke a lot of the time. In this case, I think it actually works. And I think it's more about the big personalities that you are watching more than what actually happened, which is why I chose Coneheads to pair it with. Now, I could have easily gone for The Blues Brothers, one of the greatest SNL movies ever made. Not one of, the greatest. This was my dad's favorite movie. It was a movie I grew up with. His Cheese Whiz. It is, for me, it is why Jim Belushi is Jim Belushi. I only knew who these people were for the movies that and TV shows they had done afterward. Like Jane Curtin, I knew her from watching Kate and Ellie growing up than I did from Saturday Night Live. So when a little movie came out called Wayne's World in 1991, it was a revelation. I didn't know who Mike Myers was. I didn't know who Dana Carvey was. I didn't know that they had a skit on a show called Saturday Night Live where they played Garth and Wayne. But Penelope Ferris managed to create this revolutionary comedy, at least for me, when I was like, 11, 12 years old. And it stuck with me. But the Bohemian Rhapsody scene is still something that sticks with me and I still love, and it's still one of my favorite moments. But I know in 93, maybe 94, depending when it came out, where I saw Coneheads because it was a comedy, and I went and saw every single comedy movie I could see when I was younger. And this had Dan Aykroyd in it, and it had Kate and Ellie of Kate and Ellie. What I don't remember is that it also pretty much has the whole entire cast of SNL from 1993. Because not only are Aykroyd and Curtin playing Beldar and Prime at Conehead, you also have Adam Sandler, Lorraine Newman, David Spade, Chris Farley, Phil Hartman, Tim Meadows, Jan Hooks. Garrett Morris also shows up for a bit. Kevin Nealon, who I'm pretty sure was on there. It is just a feast of who's who. I mean, even Jason Alexander, Dave Thomas, Sinbad, because it is 93, and I think it was the law to have Sinbad show up in your movie. It is definitely a meeting of SNL generations. The old guard coming in and interacting with the new guard. And Coneheads is cute, as I said. Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd was originally who came up with the script in the 1970s. I think it was like the second and third seasons when it really popped. And this was the project they decided to put out straight after Wayne's World. Now, bear in mind, Wayne's World was a massive hit. Coneheads was not. But of course, this also has Michelle Burke, who would go on to be Major League 2 as their daughter Connie. But what I really, because I actually like this movie more than I thought I was going to. I didn't have any memory. All I remember was Dan Aykroyd. It's sweet. It's a immigration story. It is about undocumented immigrants who are trying to make their life after being stuck on Earth, and their daughter is now first generation, and she has more affinity with Earth culture than she would ever with her Conehead culture. And because it has all these guys in it who were at the time contemporary of SNL and who would go on to cement their own legends. I mean, Chris Farley and Phil Hartman, again, both died before their time. They are now legends of a certain era of SNL. It's important, I think, looking back and going, holy shit, Chris Farley's like the romantic lead. This is awesome. Holy shit, Michael McKean's in this. It's, again, meeting of the old and the new. I mean, Coneheads definitely fits in with that 90s trend of making these 90s comedies that were based on classic era TV. Beverly Hillbillies, for instance, The Brady Bunch. And Coneheads absolutely fits in with that. I mean, you have the older cast with Newman, Morris, Aykroyd, Curtin with the newer cast. The movie does run out of steam until the end when it really picks up steam again. And you're like, okay, now we're getting into it. Because it is the same joke over and over again, which I feel was the same joke for a lot of these movies. Putting a out of time group into contemporary society so everyone could go, guys, it's the 90s. We were really obsessed with the 90s while we were living in the 90s. It was a thing. But this is a sweet movie. And even though it is not exactly about the ego, it is about a movie of building up again the legend of SNL. This is an advertisement for who are big in SNL while remembering its past, while remembering a sketch from the past. In that context, Coneheads is pretty cool. Yes, does it slow down? Is it the same joke over and over again of the Coneheads trying to deal with contemporary society? Yes. Is it cool to see all these guys working together? Yes. And I think it's kind of sweet. Like, it's kind of like the first Paddington. Doesn't completely work, but unfortunately, we never got a Coneheads 2 that would be completely sublime and a masterpiece. But it's a cool way to hang out on a Sunday afternoon, I will say. Coneheads is rentable. I don't know what it is outside Australia, and it's worth it. So yeah, that is this Schlock and Awe Quickie review. Go see Saturday Night. Go have a good time. And then go watch Coneheads and relax. And if you want to subscribe to this, please feel free. I'm terrified to say this, but comment. And we will be back with another double feature. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.